All right, so I want to talk really briefly about how to make a decision, especially when you're in a group. And as we talked about in the previous slide, this all comes down to figuring out what your criteria is and then applying that criteria. But sometimes, when you apply the criteria, you test all those ideas, you're still going to have one or two that meet your criteria, that are good ideas, but they are, you have several ones that are kind of like your finalists, for lack of a better term. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the video about the project management process, please make sure you do that before watching this video, because this is kind of assuming that as a group you have established your criteria and that you have basically tested and eliminated all of the options that don't fit those criteria. And because I want to talk about these decision-making types. And because, at the end of the day, if you're doing a group project and you're battling around about topics, or if you're doing a fundraiser and you've got a couple of themes in mind, there's a really good chance that you're going to have at least one or two ideas that both fit your criteria and that have kind of gone through that vetting process. So you've got two or three really good, equally nice ideas, and you have to make a decision. And I think this is the place where a lot of people they start to struggle, right? Because how do you do this in a way that's not going to hurt any feelings? Because each of those ideas are attached to a person who has been kind of advocating for that idea through the process. So how do you do that? Well, the technique is going to be based on the type of decision that you have to make, how important that decision is, and how much time you have to go through the decision-making process. Because sometimes those things will limit what you can do, all right? And so these are some of the ways that you can make a decision. Chance is the easiest, right? And this is really good when the decision isn't super important and people are really deadlocked, and either choice is a good choice. No matter which one you pick, it's going to be fine. And that's flipping a coin, pulling it out of a hat, doing a random number generator. And a lot of times I will use this when also if I am involved in the decision, it might hurt somebody's feelings or might cause harm. So for example, when I decipher speech order, I normally let my students sign up, and then people who don't sign up, I use a number generator, a random number generator, to create the order. That way, the students don't think I'm picking on them by making them go first, And so sometimes that's the beauty of chance, is that it does really take people out. And I always tell people, if you actually thought another idea was great, you will learn that while the coin is in the air, because you're like, oh no, what if it's not this one, right? Another kind of decision making, and this isn't going to happen as much in, say, like a group project, but that would be decision by authority. This happens a lot in organizations. So what often will happen is we'll have, let's just say, we're talking about the college for an example. We have, we have a committee called Employee and Student Support Committee. And it's basically, how do we support the people who work on our campus? And they might say, okay, we need to come up with a recognition program. And they were given the criteria. Well, then what happens is they might come up with two or three good ideas, but the people who are actually going to make that decision are going to be like the HR director. That's going to be like the HR director, and her staff are going to be the ones who actually make the decision. We're just providing the options. So that's decision by authority. A lot of times if you're supposed to come up with a solution and then you present it to your manager who makes the decision, that's decision by authority. A lot of times you don't have a choice if it's going to be decision by authority. Decision by majority, this is good old-fashioned voting, all right? It's really interesting because when I look and watch students work, and I'm like sitting at the front of the room, and I can almost in the back of my head go, they're going to take a vote in 3, 2, 1, and then they do. They take a vote. And it's always kind of funny because, people think that taking a vote, because we're America, and America's all about voting and democracy, that's awesome. Except, think about voting, when Barack Obama was elected president, or when Donald Trump was elected president, the people who did not vote for either of those men did not overnight suddenly become Obama or Trump fans, right? they were still not terribly happy. And that's the problem with majority rules, is that especially if it's pretty close to 50-50 and there's only one or two deciding votes, whoever didn't win, because you really have now taken this into a win-lose, whoever didn't win isn't necessarily going to be happy. And so you have to be a little bit careful about using voting. I have a tendency to only use it when it's absolutely necessary, or when I need, a majority and I can't come to another solution. So I think that that's another really important thing to keep in mind, because I think we jump to let's take a vote super easily. So just kind of keep that in mind. Decision by expert or by minority. This is normally when somebody in a group has expertise and you think they might be best suited to make the final decision. So let's pretend like your group of friends is going to go on spring break and travel somewhere. Not right now, obviously, but maybe next spring. And you guys know you want to go someplace with a beach, you have a budget, yada, 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 but you don't really know what the deals are out there. You don't know what's available. And nobody wants to spend the time to go through hundreds and hundreds of plane deals and get all these moving pieces. But one of your friends is a travel agent, or one of your friends has a parent who's a travel agent. So what you might say is, here's our criteria. Here are a couple places. Can you make the decision and let us know where the best place is to go? That's normally when you have somebody in your group who's got expertise. You're going to let them make the decision. The last one, and I save it for last because it is the best and the hardest, and that's consensus. Consensus is when not everybody doesn't necessarily agree, but what happens is they can all accept the decision of the group because they feel heard. They feel like their concerns have been at least addressed and heard, and they're willing to go along with the will of the group, or we have come to a compromise where everybody in the group is comfortable with the outcome. This is incredibly difficult to get to, but when the decision is important and when the decision is going to mean success or failure, it's vital. And it's so hard to get to. This is why I think so many people just end up going, well, let's just take a vote. I will say that I have witnessed consensus building. It takes a very long time. And I will say that in the end, not everybody says, oh yeah, I love that decision. But they will say, okay, I was okay with that decision because you addressed this need or you addressed this issue. And so consensus might be like, everybody wants to have a big party, but we want to have alcohol. Can't do that on campus. Let's assume that you're all 21 and legal. Please don't think I'm promoting illegal behavior. And people are like, well, we really want to have this. And someone says, well, what about this bar? And in the end of the day, you realize you can't really do that. Well, you find a place that you can cater in and have some alcohol, but not like an open bar or a cash bar. And people are like, okay, I really wanted to have it at this cool place, but at least my needs of, being able to sell drinks and stuff are being met. And I see that a lot in committee work and things like that, where people try to build consensus. So remember these techniques for making a decision the next time you have a decision to make, especially when you have to make it with people, and I hope it's helpful. All right, see you in the next video.